Hi guys, this is the first of what is probably going to be two videos on point of view. There's a lot of stuff with point of view that we need to cover, so I'm thinking this video is probably going to be in two parts, but I won't know until I record them. So attached to this course content module is this point of view handout, and this goes through point of view much more in depth than what is on your Elements of Craft handout. Pull that up. We're going to cover all of this stuff on your Elements of Craft handout, point of views under voice, which it really is, but we're going to look at it as a separate entity because there is so much that we're going to cover. And you probably, I know I only do in my English 100 classes, but you probably only cover the basics of point of view in English 100, so there's a lot that we're going to get into. So we're going to talk about person, tense, narrator, all the differences within narration, and the reliability of your narrator, and then we're also going to talk about psychic distance, consistency in point of view, shifting point of views, all of those things. Alright, so this, like I said, this point of view sheet is in your content folder. Alright, so this is the sheet. I actually didn't make this sheet. Somebody else in the English department did, but I really like it. So, the one thing that you need to really need to think about first is what narrative point of view is, and it's the position of the narrator in relation to the story. And that's a really good definition because there's a lot of different shades and angles to point of view. So we'll talk about that. So here, this is, these are the elements that go into point of view. Narrator's perspective, this includes tense, person, and reliability, psychic distance, and tense is over here. So, point of view, who's telling the story, whose story is being told? This is something a lot of people don't really think about is often, and you'll see this in a lot of Hemingway's writing. The Great Gatsby is a great example of this. The Great Gatsby is told in a first-person, past tense point of view from Nick Carraway's character. Nick Carraway is the narrator, and he's telling it in first-person past tense, but the story is really about Gatsby, so this is considered first-person peripheral. It's when a first-person narrator tells the story of another character. So it's as if I'm watching you and telling your story. Alright, so how close these two entities are, this is what psychic distance is, and we'll talk about that. And when the story is placed relative to when it is being told, so that's tense. Okay? So the types of perspectives. So first person, this is the I, I'm telling my story, or I'm telling his story, that's first person peripheral. So here, as a main character, I'm telling my story, as a peripheral character, as a collective. So first person, there's first person, just kind of your standard first person tense, and then there's first person peripheral and first person collective. So there's actually three different first person tenses. And this is something to think about because a lot of you will probably write in different, you may not even realize it, or you may shift between, first person main character tense and then first person peripheral and first person collective. This happens a lot. Second person, this is the you. The second, typically, there's only one tense considered one perspective with the second person, and that's you are the embodiment of the narrator. So the reader is the main character. This is very hard to do. I can only think of a handful of examples of where it's done well. Probably the most recent is a Jay McInerney novel entitled Bright Lights, Big City from, I believe it's 1983 or 1984. But the opening sentence of that book is, you wake up in a bed that's not yours. And that's how the book starts. You, as the reader, are the main character. So it's a rather odd perspective reserved for special circumstances. And the important thing is to not confuse second-person narrative perspective, with second-person voice. So second-person voice is very common, which is when you're talking to another using the pronoun you. So, this happens in narration a lot, and it happens obviously in dialogue and personal correspondences such as emails, but that's not necessarily second person narrative. The you is not the narrator. All right, third. Now this is the one that has the most, has the, well, not necessarily the most. Well, yeah, I guess technically it does. No, it has three, so it's the same as first person. But this is the one that's usually broken down and studied as three different perspectives the most. So third person omniscient is the overarching godlike narrator. A lot of contemporary fiction is written this way. This is the easiest perspective to write in because you can do anything. You can know things that the narrator can know, things that the characters don't know. The narrator, with the omniscient godlike perspective, the narrator can know the past, present, and future. Like, little did he know that's an omniscient narrator where, you're telling the reader that your character does not know what's about to happen, but you do as the narrator. And you can go into everybody's heads. You can, you can switch from knowing what character A's thoughts and motivations are to what character C's thoughts and motivations are. A lot of popular fiction's written this way. Dan Brown writes in this style all the time. A lot of other ones do. Subjective limited. This is the one that's closest to first person. This is when you can only get into, as the third person narrator, you can only go into one or two characters' thoughts. So the Dan Brown stories are mostly subjective limited, but he switches between a few individual characters' thoughts, and then the third person collective, which is, we did this, we were called grunts or whatever, or they were called grunts, I'm sorry, they were called grunts. But this is one of the more common ones, and this is the one that's the closest to first person. So this is when you can only go into the minds of, a few different characters, and you don't necessarily know the future. So the third person narrators' knowledge is limited. And then objective. Hemingway writes in this a lot. In his story, Hills Like White Elephants, that's written in third person objective, which we usually read in my English 100 classes. But this is the fly on the wall perspective, where the third person narrator is standing outside of the story and can only tell the reader what the narrator sees and hears and senses, anyone's thoughts. So this perspective is actually very close to screenwriting. In screenwriting, you always write in a third-person objective point of view when you're detailing a scene. And this is very difficult to do because when you want to show somebody's emotions, characters' emotions, you do not have the ability to say, Tyler felt sad. You have to show that Tyler felt sad through body language and expressions and action. So this is a great way to writing this perspective is a great way to. It's tough, but I've taken classes in graduate school where all we could do was write in this perspective, and it really helps you. It trains you to rely more heavily on showing the reader things like emotions, rather than telling the reader that this character feels this way. It helps you. It forces you to show more than tell. All right, so psychic distance. So this is a rather abstract concept. This is how close the narrator is to the character being portrayed. What thoughts, feelings, information does the narrator have access to? What aspects of the character does the narrator choose to reveal? So first person present is the most has the closest psychic distance because it's first person, it's I, it's present tense, so it's happening right now, but it's very immediately. I am looking out the window. It's very immediate. So it's very reactive, but then at the other end of the spectrum, for example, like first person past tense, the biggest difference between present and past tense is that in present tense, the story is raw, it's immediate, and the characters have to be reactive. With past tense, you have the luxury of hindsight, and the characters can contemplate and reflect on the events that happen to them. Now, third person, the narrator is not even a character. So the narrator is even more distant because the narrator is telling the story from outside of the story. And same thing, third person present tense. That doesn't happen very often. It's usually third person is typically written in past tense. So the reader is outside of, the narrator's outside of the story. And then with the objective point of view, where the third person narrator can only tell you what he, she sees and hears and understands based on what the characters are doing, that's as distant as you can get. So that's almost like the eavesdropping perspective. All right, so this here's a little diagram that was made, and this is kind of confusing. So this is meant to stand for the omniscient godlike narrator, and this is one character and one character. So what this means is, if this character is the narrator, he can see what this character is doing. He knows his history. Through their interaction, he can gain knowledge to her history, but the godlike narrator can come in and knows everything and the secrets of the universe. So what this is meant to show is that, and then somewhere in here would be kind of the third person limited or third person objective perspective, where the narrator can only see what's going on in between these two characters. Okay. I'm going to actually, we have a couple more minutes. I'm going to keep going. All right, so types of point of view: first person, second person, third person. Then you have peripheral, collective, limited, objective. This should really be there's a third person collective point of view too, like they were called legs or they were called grunts. So there should be actually a third person collective point of view here too. Defining point of view: narrator, characters with perspectives, narrative. So this is just kind of a little activity for you to help really understand the point of view used in a story. And then this is a really great exercise that I want you guys to always write this down and always do this when you're pre-writing a story. So you're going to figure out that this person is telling this person's story from this perspective at this psychic distance in this tense. This really helps you understand. This helps you analyze writing. But this also helps you pre-write your own writing. Okay. All right. I'm going to stop this part of the video here, and then we'll do another.